The rain hammered against the windows of the small coffee shop in downtown Detroit, each drop seeming to echo the rhythm that had been pounding in Marshall Mather's head all morning. He pulled his hood up tighter, hoping to avoid recognition. As he nursed his third cup of black coffee, these quiet moments had become precious to him, rare opportunities to just be Marshall. Not Eminem, not Slim Shady, just a man trying to make sense of the world around him. He'd been clean for over a decade now, but some days, the weight of his past still pressed down on him like a physical force. Today was one of those days. The anniversary of his mother's death always hit him hard, and despite all the therapy, all the growth, all the forgiveness he'd worked so hard to achieve, this date on the calendar still made him feel like that angry kid from 8 Mile again. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed, and Marshall glanced up instinctively. A young man walked in, maybe early 20s, with the kind of hollow look in his eyes that Marshall recognized all too well. The kid was soaked from the rain, his clothes hanging off his thin frame like he'd lost weight recently. There was something familiar about him, but Marshall couldn't place it. The young man ordered a small coffee with shaking hands, counting out crumpled bills and loose change. Marshall watched as the barista, a kind middle-aged woman, quietly gave him a larger size without charging extra. Detroit people looking out for Detroit people looking out for Detroit people. It was something that still warmed Marshall's heart after all these years. As the kid turned to find a seat, his eyes met Marshall's. For a moment, there was just confusion, then recognition, then something that made Marshall's stomach tighten, pure, undiluted hatred. "You," the young man said, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying the weight of years of pain. "You're him." Marshall nodded slowly, prepared for whatever was coming. He'd faced angry fans before, people who blamed him for everything wrong with their lives or with music or with society. But there was something different about this kid's anger, felt personal in a way that went beyond celebrity criticism. "Yeah, I'm him," Marshall said quietly. "You want to sit down?" The question seemed to catch the young man off guard. He stood there for a moment, dripping rainwater onto the worn wooden floor, his hands trembling around his coffee cup. "I hate you," he said finally, but the words came out broken, like a confession he'd been holding back for years. "I figured," Marshall replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "But you're here, and I'm here, and it's raining like hell outside. Might as well talk about it." The young man hesitated, then slowly walked over and sat down. Up close, Marshall could see the kid was in rough shape, hollow cheeks, dark circles under his eyes, the telltale signs of someone who'd been fighting battles that weren't visible from the outside. "What's your name?" Marshall asked. "Tyler," the young man said reluctantly. "Tyler Morrison." The name hit Marshall like a punch to the gut. Morrison, he knew that name. The memories came flooding back, a news story from about 8 years ago. A family destroyed, a tragedy that had haunted him for months afterward. "Morrison," Marshall repeated slowly. "Your dad, was he David Morrison?" Tyler's jaw tightened, and his hands clenched into fists on the table. "Don't you dare say his name." But Marshall had to ask, even though he already knew the answer. "The veteran, the one who, the one who killed himself after listening to your music all night," Tyler finished, his voice cracking. "Yeah, that's my dad." The coffee shop seemed to fade away around them. Marshall felt like he was drowning, pulled back into one of the darkest periods of his life. David Morrison had been a Iraq War veteran struggling with PTSD. He'd been found dead in his apartment, Marshall's music playing on repeat, a note that mentioned how the pain in the songs spoke to his own suffering. The media had had a field day with it, blaming Marshall's lyrics for pushing a troubled man over the edge. "Tyler, I know." Tyler cut him off, tears starting to stream down his face. "You don't get to say you're sorry. You don't get to make this better with words. Do you know what it's like to lose your dad and then have everyone tell you it's because of some rapper's songs? Do you know what it's like to hear your music everywhere and feel like you're being stabbed in the heart every single time?" Marshall felt his own eyes welling up. He'd carried the weight of David Morrison's death for years. Had even written songs about it that never saw the light of day. Working through his own guilt and responsibility in therapy session after therapy session. "Tell me about him," Marshall said softly. "What, your dad? Tell me about who he was before the war, before the pain. I want to know." Tyler stared at him, confusion mixing with anger. "Why?" "Because I've carried his death with me for 8 years, and I think you have to, and maybe it's time we both learned how to carry it differently." For a long moment, Tyler said nothing. Then, slowly, he began to speak. "He was the best dad in the world when I was little," Tyler said, his voice barely audible. "He used to take me fishing every weekend, and he'd make up these ridiculous stories about the fish we caught. He said every fish had a personality, and he'd give them names and voices. I thought he was the funniest person alive." Marshall listened, really listened, as Tyler painted a picture of a man who had been full of life and love before the war changed everything. When he came back from Iraq, he was different. Tyler continued. "He couldn't sleep, couldn't hold down a job. Mom tried to help, but he just kept getting worse. They divorced when I was 15. I stayed with Mom, but I'd visit him on weekends. His apartment was so quiet, so empty. He said the silence was the worst part. That's when the memories came back. Is that why he listened to music? Tyler nodded, wiping his nose with his sleeve. He said it helped drown out the thoughts. At first it was country music, then rock, then he found your stuff. He said it was the only thing that made him feel like someone understood how angry he was. Marshall felt a chill run down his spine. Tyler, I need you to know something. I never meant for my music to hurt anyone. I was writing about my own pain, my own anger, trying to make sense of it all, but it did hurt someone. Tyler said, his voice rising, it hurt my dad, and it hurt me, and it hurt my mom. We all blamed ourselves, but we blamed you too. I spent years hating you, listening to your songs just to feel angry, just to have somewhere to put all that pain. And now Tyler looked down at his hands. Now I don't know what to feel. I came here today because today's the anniversary. 8 years ago today, I found my dad's body. I was walking around in the rain, not knowing what to do with myself, and I saw you through the window. Part of me wanted to scream at you, to make you hurt the way I've been hurting. And the other part is tired, Tyler admitted. I'm so tired of being angry all the time. I'm tired of hating you, hating myself, hating the world. I'm tired of living like this. Marshall reached across the table and gently touched Tyler's hand. The young man didn't pull away. Tyler, can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone. Tyler nodded. After your dad died, I went through a really dark period. I blamed myself, wondered if I should stop making music altogether. I wrote letter after letter to your family that I never sent. I donated money anonymously to veterans organizations. I went to therapy 3 times a week because I couldn't handle the guilt. Tyler looked up, surprised. But you know what, my therapist helped me realize your dad didn't die because of my music. He died because he was in pain from things that happened to him long before he ever heard one of my songs. My music might have been the soundtrack to his suffering, but it wasn't the cause of it. But he was listening to it when he was listening to it because it made him feel less alone. Marshall interrupted gently. And that's not a bad thing, Tyler. Even if the ending was tragic, for those hours when he was listening, he didn't feel like he was the only person in the world carrying that kind of pain. Tyler was quiet for a long time, processing this new perspective. I never thought about it that way, he said finally. I wrote a song about your dad, Marshall said. I never recorded it, never performed it, but I wrote it because I needed to find a way to honor his memory, to acknowledge his pain without taking responsibility for choices that weren't mine to make. What was it about? It was about a soldier who came home from war, carrying invisible wounds, and how sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is just keep breathing for one more day. It was about how music can be a lifeline, even when life feels impossible. Tyler wiped his eyes, and Marshall could see something shifting in his expression. Can I ask you something? Tyler said. Anything. Do you think my dad would be proud of me? The question caught Marshall off guard. What do you mean? I mean, look at me. I'm 23 years old. I work part-time at a grocery store. I live in a studio apartment that's falling apart, and I spend most of my time being angry about things that happened 8 years ago. I dropped out of college after he died. I haven't had a serious relationship because I'm too messed up. I feel like I'm wasting the life he died trying to preserve. Marshall felt his heart breaking for this young man who had been carrying so much pain for so long. Tyler, let me tell you what I see when I look at you. I see someone who lost his dad at a crucial time in his life and still managed to survive. I see someone who's been carrying grief and anger for 8 years, but still has enough empathy to sit here and talk to the person he thought was his enemy. I see someone who's strong enough to ask hard questions about his own life, but I haven't done anything with my life. You're 23 years old. You've got time to do everything you want to do. Your dad didn't die so you could punish yourself. For the rest of your life, he died because he was in pain and couldn't find another way out. But you're not him, Tyler. You're not trapped in his story. Tyler looked up, and for the first time since he'd walked into the coffee shop, Marshall saw something other than pain in his eyes. He saw hope. I don't know how to stop being angry, Tyler admitted. You don't have to stop being angry. You just have to learn how to use that anger for something constructive instead of something destructive. Like what? Marshall thought for a moment. What did your dad care about? What made him happy before the war? He loved helping people. He was always volunteering at the VA hospital, visiting guys who were worse off than him. Even when he was struggling, he'd find ways to help other veterans. So help other veterans, Marshall said simply. Channel that anger into advocacy, into support, into making sure other families don't have to go through what you went through. Tyler was quiet for a long time, and Marshall could see the wheels turning in his mind. I wouldn't know where to start. I might be able to help with that, Marshall said. I've been working with some veterans organizations for years. Quietly, you know. It's not something I publicize, but it's important to me. Maybe we could work together on something. Tyler looked stunned. You'd want to work with me? After everything I just said. Especially after everything you just said. Tyler, you've been living with this pain for 8 years, and you just had the courage to sit down with someone you hate and have an honest conversation about it. That takes strength. That takes character. Those are exactly the qualities that could help other people who are struggling. The rain outside had slowed to a gentle patter, and the afternoon light was starting to filter through the clouds. The coffee shop was filling up with the usual after-work crowd, but Marshall and Tyler remained in their own bubble of conversation. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me, Tyler said. Okay, do you ever regret making the music you made? The angry stuff, the violent stuff? Marshall considered the question carefully. I regret that it hurt people like your family, but I don't regret making it, because it was honest. It was where I was at that time in my life, and it helped me work through things I couldn't work through any other way. And I know it's helped other people, two people who felt angry and alone and needed to know they weren't the only ones feeling that way. But what about the responsibility that comes with having that kind of influence? That's something I think about every day, Marshall admitted. I can't control how people interpret my music or what they do with it, but I can be responsible about what I put out there now. I can try to balance the darkness with light, the anger with hope. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. I used to think you were just this angry guy who didn't care about the damage you caused. But sitting here talking to you, you're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone arrogant, maybe. Someone who would dismiss me or make excuses. Not someone who would listen to me talk about my dad for an hour and offer to help me find a way to honor his memory. Marshall smiled slightly. I'm not the same person I was when I wrote those early songs. I'm not even the same person I was 8 years ago when your dad died. People change. Tyler, we grow, we learn, we find better ways to deal with our pain. How do you deal with yours now? Therapy, meditation, exercise, writing music that hopefully helps more than it hurts, and talking to people like you. Tyler laughed, and it was the first time Marshall had seen him smile. I never thought I'd be sitting in a coffee shop having therapy with Eminem. Just call me Marshall, he said. Eminem is what I do, Marshall is who I am. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both processing the weight of their conversation. Marshall, Tyler said finally, I think I'm ready to stop hating you. And I think I'm ready to stop hating myself for your dad's death. Tyler extended his hand across the table. So what happens now? Marshall shook it firmly. Now we figure out how to turn this pain into purpose. We find a way to help other people who are struggling. We make sure your dad's death means something. You really think we can do that? I think we can try. And I think your dad would be proud of both of us for trying. As they left the coffee shop together, the rain had stopped completely, and the sun was breaking through the clouds. Tyler walked with his shoulders a little straighter, and Marshall felt lighter than he had in years. 3 months later, Tyler Morrison and Marshall Mathers stood together at the opening of a new Veterans Resource Center in Detroit. The center offered counseling, job training, and support groups for veterans struggling with PTSD and other invisible wounds of war. A plaque by the entrance read, in memory of David Morrison and all the soldiers who made it home but never stopped fighting. Tyler had quit his job at the grocery store and was now working full-time as a peer counselor at the center. He'd gone back to school to study social work, and he spoke regularly at events about the importance of mental health support for veterans and their families. Marshall had quietly funded the center and continued to work with Tyler on expanding their programs. He'd written a new song, one that he did record about healing, redemption, and finding purpose in pain. It wasn't angry music. It was hopeful music. During the opening ceremony, Tyler took the microphone to address the crowd of veterans, family members, and community supporters. 8 years ago, I lost my dad to suicide, he began, his voice steady and strong. For a long time, I was angry about it. I was angry at the war, angry at the system that failed him, angry at the world for not understanding his pain. I was even angry at a musician whose songs my dad found comfort in during his darkest hours. He paused, looking out at the crowd, then at Marshall, who was standing off to the side. But anger alone doesn't honor the dead. It doesn't help the living. What honors the dead is making sure their suffering wasn't in vain, that their stories help others find hope instead of despair. Tyler's voice grew stronger as he continued. My dad was a good man who carried invisible wounds from serving his country. He died because those wounds went untreated for too long. But his death doesn't have to be the end of his story. Today, we're opening a place where other veterans can find the help he never received. We're creating a community where no one has to suffer alone. The crowd erupted in applause, and Marshall felt tears streaming down his face. This young man who had once hated him with such intensity had become one of the most inspiring people he'd ever met. After the ceremony, as the crowd was dispersing, Tyler approached Marshall. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For listening, for caring, for helping me turn the worst day of my life into something that might save other people's lives. Marshall put his arm around Tyler's shoulder. Thank you for giving me the chance to be part of something bigger than myself. As they stood there together, watching veterans and their families explore the new resource center, Marshall thought about the long journey that had brought them to this moment. From that rainy afternoon in a coffee shop to this celebration of hope and healing, it had been a path neither of them could have imagined. You know what the crazy thing is? Tyler said, breaking into Marshall's thoughts. What's that? I actually listen to your music now. Not the old angry stuff, the new songs, the ones about growth and redemption and finding your way through the darkness. Marshall laughed. And how do they make you feel? Like I'm not alone, Tyler said. Like someone understands that you can be broken and still become whole again. Like my dad would be proud of who I'm becoming. He would be, Marshall said with certainty. He absolutely would be. As the sun set over Detroit, casting long shadows across the city that had shaped both of their lives, Marshall Mathers and Tyler Morrison stood together as proof that even the deepest wounds can heal, that even the most profound hatred can transform into love, and that sometimes the most unlikely friendships are the ones that change everything. The story of their meeting would never make headlines. There were no cameras, no social media posts, no publicity. But in the quiet corners of Detroit, in the lives of the veterans they helped, in the families they supported, their story rippled outward like stones thrown into still water, creating waves of healing that would touch countless lives for years to come. And sometimes, on quiet rainy afternoons, they would meet at that same coffee shop where it all began. Two men who had learned that the most powerful force in the world isn't anger or hatred, it's the courage to turn pain into purpose, and enemies into allies, one honest conversation at a time.